vernacular architecture. All architecture is in some measure vernacular. It isn't really a category of architecture that separates it from, let us say, high architecture. Rather, all architecture is vernacular, but architecture can be more or less vernacular in relationship to the degree to which it fits place, fits taste, fits need. Architecture is the result of living, of dwelling, of being in place, being somewhere long enough that we begin to drive into space the proposition of time. Exactly what architecture does is to become part of place, therefore of time in space. When you put time and space together, you have places, intimate territories that are worth preserving. Of all of architecture's variety, the house is the central and most complex. Every house offers simultaneously to us a proposition of continuity and a proposition of change. It is a thing made out of time in place, and because it's a part of place and of time and of continuity and of change, the house offers to us the very best resource that we have for writing a wider, richer, deeper, more democratic history. I'm serious. Houses are better than written documents, by far, if our interest is writing a history that is about everyone. Very few people wrote. Everybody lives someplace. So I'm going to tell you about how history is held by houses. I begin my story in Ireland. In Ireland, and in a particular region of Ireland. The drumlin belt that runs from east to west, that carries the low hills across the borderland of Ireland. And in this territory, people live in a zone of habitation that's above the damp bottoms and below the rocky tops. In that middle zone of habitation, cattle graze and people live. That's where houses are built. Above the damp, below the rocks, among the cattle, on the hillsides of the borderland of Ireland. The people who live here classify houses by their roofing. Old houses are thatched, new houses are covered by sheet metal. That's what the people who live here, I'm not talking about what academic historians say, I'm talking about what the people who live in this landscape, how they think about time. They think about time as primarily connected to materials. And what makes a house a step towards the modern is that it moves away from natural materials towards artificial materials, that it moves away from thatching towards tin. That is, in this region, the step from thatch to tin is a step to the modern. The question I, as historian, ask, is the modern the same as the good? Is the modern the same as progress? Certainly there's been this step from thatching to tin, but has that step increased quality? Well, ask the Thatcher. His answer is no. Is tin better than thatch? Is the new better than the old? Only people who haven't experienced the old would think so. Anybody who's experienced both the new and the old would understand, as this man's close colleague and neighbor, Hugh Nolan, said, in history, the two things happen at the one time. Things get better, and they get worse. That's true. I was standing with Tommy Love in this picture at the top of a lane that led down toward the house that he had just thatched. And he said, with a kind of sentimentality that couldn't be matched by the outside romantic, do you know, when the sun glints off it, it looks like gold. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful, right enough. Let us think with Tommy about thatching. He, peasant, thought first about aesthetics. Thatching is beautiful. Tin is not. More importantly, thatching is superior environmentally. It's thick, resistant to frost. It's cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. It's simply better environmentally. If we think about it economically, and this would be Tommy's argument, although aesthetics began, economics is really where it lay, the stuff of which you cover your roof grows out of your land. Just naturally, you don't have to worry about it at all. It simply grows there. It costs nothing. Do you need elaborate tools? Not at all. You just need a simple knife. That's all you need in order to thatch a roof. That is to say, it's a perfectly sustainable technology. If roofs were thatched, we would go on and on and on forever, destroying nothing in the environment and costing the people who live under the house nothing. But it doesn't mean that thatching has no problem. It has requirements. The first one is knowledge. You can't be stupid. You've got to understand seeds and soil and wind and rain. You've got to be able to grow the stuff that makes the thatching on the roof. You've got to understand farming. You've also got to have the skill. It takes knowledge, it takes skill. You've got to have the skill to be able to take that stuff out of the ground and apply it to the roof. You also have to have social connections. That is to say, you've had to work on building a community around you because maybe you can't do it, and so that you've got to have somebody else come over to do your roof. And in that case, you've got to have something to trade with them. You've had to have fed them at Kaylee's. You've had to serve them tea. You've had to become their friends. You have to be, as Ellen Cutler was, a woman who couldn't thatch her house, but who could just send across the word, across the bog to Joe Murphy, and Joe would show up and thatch her house. It took 2 days of his life, but they were neighbors. That is to say, the requirements of thatching, of the old technology, the requirements were knowledge, skill, and social connection. The problem with thatching is it takes constant maintenance. It's like a real old automobile. You've got to be constantly tinkering with it. And so it needs to be renewed every year, and it has to be completely replaced every dozen years. That's thatching's problem. What's good about tin? It's effectively permanent. Under a tin roof, you sit stupid, skillless, alienated, but dry. All you need to have a tin roof is cash. Therefore, the change, and a very clear change, from the old houses, this is John Galeese's house, from the old houses that were thatched, they were the result of a direct engagement by the householder with the nearby environment and with the neighbors. They were the result of a direct connection with nature and a direct connection with society. They were symbols, to say it simply, of local autonomy. You didn't need cash, you didn't need anything except energy and neighbors. When tin enters the picture, what you've got to have is cash. And what does that mean? That means a tin roof sucks you into an international capitalist economy that takes its money back as soon as it gives it away. You're stuck in a massive system that you simply don't understand. What tin means in the environment of Ireland, and why the people talk about the difference between thatching and tin, is that the thatched house was the pure product of local power. The tin roof is the way in which the community has begun to surrender to international powers that the local people simply don't understand at all. So the first thing that tin means in the argument that I'm mounting for you is that it's a step toward the modern Irish landscape. And that landscape is characterized by, first of all, ruins of abandoned country houses as people have moved to the city. And second of all, commodified houses that belong not in place, but in an international economic system. Well, that's the pattern I've begun with my story about Ireland. But as a general pattern, it's a pattern as true for Otsego County as it is for, let us just say, at random, Bangladesh. It happens that we've moved to the other end of an empire that, on which the sun once didn't set, that's fortunately crumbled since. Ireland was connected only through commercial ties ultimately in England to the east of Bengal. This is a very particular landscape. Like Ireland, wet, unlike Ireland, hot, and seeming in no way similar. It's utterly flat. It's the biggest delta in the world, and that delta has been created by the Ganges, the Brahmaputra, and the Meghna as they've flowed down from the highest mountains in the world to produce an amazing, broad, completely without feature landscape that is entirely made of clay. There's not a stone in the nation. It's nothing but silt, which means that the land is unbelievably rich. 60 to 70 feet of topsoil. You can get 3 crops in a year. It never gets even cool, much less cold. But it's true that if you want a place to live, you've got to dig up clay and transport it. Every village is a result of millions and millions of headroads that have been carried by people from one place to the other. Every elevation requires an equal and opposite excavation as people scoop up earth and mound it up into the villages of Bangladesh, of which there are 65,000. In these villages today, the change that I've talked about in Ireland is taking place. In Ireland, it's really thought of as a change that took place largely between about 1930 and 60. In Bangladesh, it's a change that you can simply watch happening today. That is to say, there is this change in roofing. The old houses are not only thatched, the house is entirely made of natural materials, entirely made by the people who live in the place. So the ceiling is thatched. The walls might be made of clay, which is the silt that's under your feet, an unbelievably wonderful resource as long as you're a potter or a person who wants to have mud for walls. The bamboo grows in tremendous abundance. And the result of that is that the old houses, this is my friend Abdul Hamid's house in the village of Gilande, and Abdul Hamid's house was built by Abdul Hamid and his native neighbors entirely out of materials they could have scooped up within 30 feet of the house. That is to say, it's an utterly local product. Local in energy, local in materials. And the new houses, like Shamsuddin's in the village of Rupshi, are entirely sheathed in tin. Well, it's fashionable, it's costly, and it's unbelievably a bad decision in the heat of Bangladesh. You just live in an oven. Everybody admires you because you got the best house in the village, but in fact it's utterly uncomfortable. And you think conceivably in Otsego County that you've ever experienced heat. But Bangladesh is a different deal. I was there one time when for 6 days the temperature never went below 110 ever. I mean, in the middle of the night, you're soaking in soup. And what could be worse than a tin house? But it's the fashionable thing, folks.